Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thanks for joining us. I wanted to pull that up. That is a live shot there of the Tillicum Bridge. And it is pretty nice outside today if you are watching this live, but also some pretty nice weather there and a nice looking river that we had joining us there as well. All right. This is Fox 12 Now. We are live streaming here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom as we do every weekday. I appreciate everybody joining and getting to be a part of this show, however it is that you found us. Thanks for doing so. We cover a wide range of topics. And today we are talking about the Freshwater Trust. We're talking about the waterways here in our area and beyond. How do we protect them? How do you utilize them for agriculture, for commercial uses, and also for everybody else, and keep those rivers just nice and safe and clean for everybody? And we're going to be talking about that with Joe Whitworth, who is joining us here now. Joe, let me pull you up here, Joe. I'm having a little bit of an issue with my system. There we go. Got you right there. Because we're talking about technology, and of course, this is right when I'm pressing the button and not utilizing it well. You, though, are utilizing technology well for the Freshwater Trust, and that's what we want to get into and talk about that. And Joe, if you don't mind giving everybody just a little bit of the backstory about this organization and really what was the goal when forming it.
Yeah, so the Freshwater Trust happened through the merger of two Oregon-based nonprofits that were innovators in their own rights. And really the strategic intent for this particular entity is how do we speed up the pace and scale of restoration so that we can live up to all those wonderful, legal words written that now need to toggle to the ground. And it happens to need to work with real people of all stripes.
And so those organizations coming together and then, finding out these different ways. So let's talk about, some of those missions. So get into that a little bit more, talking about, conservation and restoration. So when you look at some of the things that the Freshwater Trust does, what are some initiatives that maybe people would understand and see that would need to be worked on?
Well, we actually those two organizations began focused on wild fish recovery and, in fact, listed several of the first Pacific salmon under this Endangered Species Act. But the point was not to just put them on a list and litigate and say no to everything. The point was to actually do enough good things in the right places on a short enough timeline so that the fish could recover and you could actually remove the protections of the act. So that led us, the other organization, to really do proactive willing buyer, willing seller deals with agriculture so that they could effectively use less water and make more money and put the saved water in stream for the benefit of the stream. And so the impetus for the Freshwater Trust was really to start leveraging new technologies. There's a lot of publicly available data that you can harness with increasingly beefy technology. And, to some degree, what we've figured out how to do is to X-ray nature. Now, our biologists would cringe at that characterization a little bit, and it does shorthand it. But what we figured out how to do is we can sort through 30 million acres to find the 10,000 that matter, and then we put the deals together for those landowners to change how they're operating, become more profitable, and help their own business out, but also the downstream beneficiaries, certainly, everything from the local towns and their drinking water supply, but also downstream for fish and for tribes and for other ecosystems as we go.
Wow. So this is, correct me if I'm wrong as I sum this up, but utilizing all of this data that's out there and the technology to take the way that we were doing it is just kind of like throw things out there against the wall and hope something sticks, to really finding out exactly where the real problem or pressure point is and then alleviating that or fixing that, restoring that, whatever that may be. And it kind of solves things for a lot of people.
Exactly. And the reality is we had plenty of money to fix all of our conservation issues. We don't need more money as a sector. What we need to do is spend it way better than what we have. And through the fault of no one, these types of insight have just not been available until the Freshwater Trust started going, you know what, we really need to speed things up and shrink the size of the problem. And, if you don't have to attack 30 million acres, but you can go right after those 10,000 that matter, that effectively shrinks the problem and makes it more addressable. The other thing that we are very attuned to is the reality that most of the water is controlled by agriculture, and they're largely unregulated for historical and political reasons. But what we want to be able to do is put them in a situation where they can make an obvious decision that improves their own economic circumstances while also improving, the downstream users, if you will.
So really helping everybody out. I've got a few questions here for you, obviously, but let's talk about from the agricultural standpoint. What's the feedback been that you've received so far when you approach them and say, "Hey, this section we can do this, and it'll help you out economically"? How have they responded to that?
Well, it's practical and to look at it first economically from their perspective. They don't have to necessarily do this because they just want to help, right? And so there are all these different pots of money out there. All of the federal programs, U.S. Department of Agriculture is the largest conservation spender in the world. And they have a few other players at the federal level, EPA, NOAA Fisheries, as well as Fish and Wildlife, and they all have state corollaries. And all these pots of money are all around. But it's very difficult for an individual landowner to go write those grants, figure out how to apply for the permits, negotiate a deal with the irrigation supply company. And so what we do is our technology is based on their data. These are the federal agencies and their approved models, so that we just put it together in a way that can give you an entire view of a whole basin, not just a project here or there, but how the whole jigsaw puzzle is supposed to work out. And once we do that, that enables them to effectively build a funding stack of different colors of money that would be very hard to access for any individual actor or farmer, and we can make it more turnkey. So it's really about finding out where the highest priorities, where you can get the greatest amount of environmental benefit for the least amount of cost, getting those dollars together, and then working with the local supply chain and people that they live and work with in their communities to get the projects done on the ground. And a typical project would be anything from planting trees to cover a small stream to increasing irrigation efficiencies by putting in a great big sprinkler pivot, one of those big circles you see from the sky when you're looking down at it from an airplane, and that basically can upgrade their irrigation system from something that was figured out in the 1800s to something that can serve them well in today's drought intensifying world.
And utilizing that technology and the resources at hand to better use them, what they have available there.
Yeah, all the data. I mean, we don't have a data problem in the world. We have an insight problem. So once we have plenty of science folks on staff, and certainly within the expert agencies and other people that are in this world. But it wasn't until we converted that data into maps. It really makes things very easy to understand from a decision-making standpoint. You're like, well, if I was going to spend money, I should spend it here. And, increasingly, we want to see more of the taxpayer dollars used well to those projects that get the greatest amount of environmental uplift for the least cost. And that's what the Freshwater Trust proprietary software enables. It really just opens up the door for all of these people, whether you're a farmer or you're a regulator or you're a funder or you're a philanthropist, everybody can find an easy way in to make more of these projects get done by bringing the resources together and making it a little more point and click than it's been in the past.
Yeah, making it easy for everybody or easier rather. I'm sure nothing's easy, but easier for everybody to get involved and find a benefit, no matter how it is that you're looking at the problem, I would imagine.
Exactly. And, we have, one of the things that we've discovered is that, looking at the entire basin and all the actions within a basin, that's kind of nobody's job. It's, whether you're a hydroelectric facility or you're an irrigator growing carrot seed, or you are a federal agency that's trying to fund good projects, or you are a local watershed group, you're looking at the bits and pieces rather than the whole. And I think that's where the big breakthrough is, to be able to see the entire basin so that you can figure out what is the fastest, cheapest way for us to return function to this basin. And really, in some sense, that's what we've been able to do, is bring a lot of people to the table and much more rapidly get to the solutions that are available to all the folks that all want to go to the same place, but don't necessarily say it the same way. And, by kind of bringing all of the information of, several data sets into an operable map that can say, oh, you got to go here, you got to go here. What's that? What's the opportunity? It simplifies and streamlines the conversation, and that's really the key to pace and scale.
You mentioned a couple of those different examples there, talking about the trees along the water and maybe a different irrigation system. But just to maybe reiterate those, and also, what are some examples of some of the different projects where you've brought people together and found these ways to kind of satisfy everybody's needs or advance different goals all at the same time?
Yeah, so a great example here in Oregon, down on the Rogue River system, we were working with the city of Medford, and they needed to cool their wastewater plants effluent, the water that comes out of that process and into the river. And so, because under the Clean Water Act, because we have listed species here in these rivers, temperature is a pollutant under that particular legislation. So essentially, everything that goes down a pipe has to be, or, whether it's a sink or, in your shower, everything goes down and it has to be treated by the municipality. During that treatment process, they have to heat it up. And in order for it to be compliant with the Clean Water Act, it has to cool down. And in the case of Medford, they were going to spend about $16 million to basically dig a hole, pump the water in, let it sit for a while, and then pump it back in. And we figured out how to quantify environmental uplift using, again, not our models, but federally approved models, so that we figured out that if you put tree plantings in targeted places throughout a watershed, you can get greater cooling by covering, the water from the sun, and cool down a watershed much quicker and honestly much cheaper than doing it in a mechanical way. So, we were able to. They had a requirement of having a temperature unit that they had to hit of 300 million kilocalories a day. That sounds like a big number, and it is, but it's also something that we were able to more than double, and we did it for about a third of the cost. But then what we did was we went out to some of those other sources of money. Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, which takes lottery proceeds to do salmon benefiting projects, and Army Corps of Engineer mitigation dollars, and some foundation dollars. And we did the trees, but then we also fenced out some cows. We put some water in stream, and we also created big log jams, which are kind of like fish hotels for holding and rearing. And what we saw was, year over year, a biological response from the fish, that the populations increased 300%, then 600, then 6,000, and on and on. And that's really what we're after, is that biological response. And once we saw that you can do a lot of work in the right places on a short enough time frame to get that response, we're like, here we go, let's start scaling this out. And that's exactly what we've done. To date, we're now working in several Western states with a line of sight to put more than $1 billion worth of priority-based actions on the ground to do the same kind of thing that we did right here in Oregon.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty incredible seeing how all that works. And I know we've just barely scratched the surface. So I want to let everybody know, for people who want to find out more, or maybe there's somebody out there who's a farmer, or maybe somebody who works with one of these types of organizations that you just mentioned, who has a concern about their investment in whatever their waterway is. How can they get involved and find out more about the Freshwater Trust?
Well, of course, the website, www.thefreshwatertrust.org. And, we we really focus on working with local supply chains. Our big thing is we want to put the deals together so local folks can do the work. Find that they're much more effective in, what they're doing than artificially, running our folks out there and doing the work. And that seems to be the way to go. So you can also talk to your Soil and Water Conservation District office or the USDA's Natural Resource Conservation Service, and they can put us all together.
Fantastic. Joe, thank you very much, for having some time to talk to us about that and learn about this. And I love anything, that helps conserve and improve waterways for everybody, but also using technology. So that's, and data and just harnessing all of that stuff that's out there to try to speed things up, as you mentioned. So thank you very much for having some time to join us today.
One other thing, Greg,
oh, yeah,
if
go
I
for
might.
it. Yeah.
How we got into this, there was this very specific project that we're doing. We had to do 1 mile of restoration, and it took us 3 years of permitting and funding cycles to get the chance to do that. And at the Freshwater Trust, we scratched our head and said, okay, we're, 1 mile in 3 years. How good are we doing? How much more do we have to do? The state of Oregon has 115,000 stream miles. 80,000 of those miles need some form of redress. Everybody in this business, everybody in conservation completes maybe 700 projects in a year. Those don't average 1 mile of benefit, but if we only moved at that speed, 700 into 80,000 equals we're not going fast enough. And so what we've been able to do is accelerate that. And whether you're treating wildfire or restoring river miles or converting irrigation from inefficient to an efficient way, we've just got to speed things up. So we've got to use new tools. And that's what the Freshwater Trust is all about.
Love it. Joe, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining us and sharing that information and, different ways to help speed things up. I think that's something across the board everybody can agree with, that moving faster to solve some of these issues is always a good thing. So thanks, Joe. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks a ton. Take care.
And for everybody watching live, we've got to take a quick break. We will be back here, though, throughout the afternoon, so feel free to come on back. If this is your first time watching, this is Fox 12 Now. We're here every weekday starting at 1 p.m. We get to have these longer form discussions and go a little more in-depth into some of these different topics, and that's what we do here every day. So, again, download that Fox 12 Oregon app. That's a great way to watch all of our shows and everything else that we have going here for Fox 12 Oregon. I'll talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.